In our current era of numerous nonfiction self-help books designed to encourage more productivity, especially at work, it often feels like fiction is looked down upon as a waste of time, unserious, or even pointless. But is that an accurate assessment? Is fiction inherently inferior to nonfiction? I would argue no. In fact, I would argue that fiction is as important as nonfiction, and by certain metrics, fiction is more important than nonfiction. Here are 10 ways that reading fiction can change you for the better. 1. It encourages empathy and compassion. With fiction, you can read about people who are different than you, or you can read about people who are similar to you, but in either case, I think it encourages empathy and compassion. You get to experience life from the perspective of someone else, and it helps you see things from their perspective. I think fiction promotes more kindness to yourself and others. You can see a character's thought process, and you can sort of imagine how people might have a similar thought process. Even if you don't necessarily agree, you can at least have a sort of a cognitive empathy for where they're coming from. You enter into a character's world in a very personal and intimate way, and it's hard not to have empathy even for this fictitious character with all their life experiences that made them a certain way. And it doesn't necessarily mean you always agree with everything they say or do or think, but you can at least try to understand. There are studies that show that people who read more fiction tend to score higher on empathy tests. So that's a positive trait that you should want more of. 2. It helps you better understand others and promotes emotional intelligence. A fiction book or novel is unique in that you get to hear the internal monologue and internal thought process of a character. Even though I think movies and TV shows, you can get some idea of a character, it's not quite as direct as reading a novel or a fiction book. So fiction provides really unique window into characters that most other forms of art and media really don't. There are studies that have shown that people who read fiction score higher on levels of emotional intelligence than people who don't. In fiction, you might have a character that comes off as kind of rude and a bit of a jerk to people. But when you see their internal thought process, you see this as coming from a place of insecurity. They feel they have to compensate for their own lack of self-worth, so they treat others poorly. You can sometimes see people in your own life doing that exact same thing. So in some ways, I feel like it helps you to not be as sensitive and not take things as personally from other people, and just know that this person has their own issues that they're going through, and it's really not about you. Or you can kind of tie things that are happening in fiction to things that have happened in your own life. 3. It cultivates creativity and imagination. I'm the kind of person that when I'm reading a book that I really like, I often imagine what it would look like as a movie or miniseries. So I don't know if that means I'm not a real fiction fan or reading fan, or it's funny, sometimes I've read books that the reason why I read the book was because I had seen some sort of adaptation, movie, miniseries. But then I read the book and I'm like, imagine a different version or take on the story. So I think that fiction can straightforwardly encourage creativity in that way. But I think just in life in general, fiction can encourage creativity. Like if you're having difficulty solving some sort of problem, taking a break and reading some fiction and then coming back to the problem, you might find that by reading fiction, you're able to solve the problem, or at least come closer to it. Reading fiction opens up your mind so you can see different and alternative ways of going about or solving something. It just allows you to think in a less rigid way and understand that there could be different ways of going about something. So even in projects that aren't overtly creative, I think reading fiction can help you bring a creativity because your thought process is in a more creative place. 4. It helps with social connections and eases loneliness. Joining a book club is one obvious way that reading fiction can help with loneliness. But reading a story that you're drawn into with characters you find compelling can be a way to ease loneliness in your own life. Even though it's not a substitute for actually getting to know real people, fictitious characters can help you feel better when you're going through a time where you don't have a lot of people in your life. And obviously fictitious characters don't take the energy or emotional work that friends and even acquaintances can take. So you can sometimes get some energy just through and sense of connection through the interactions of fictitious characters. So you can get some of the positives of social connections without some of the negatives. Of course, hopefully that will lead to eventually more real social connections. But in the meantime, it can give you a kind of a warm, positive internal feeling of connection that can help you get through the day or what you're going through. 5. It takes you to different times and places. You get to go to times and places you might never go to otherwise when you read fiction. You can read books that were either written in the past or that take place in the past, where you can get an idea of what that was like and the mindset and just how people talked. And you can go to all different places, past or present, and you can just, in a sense, kind of, even though you're not there, you can almost feel what it's like from reading about it. You can also get more interested in geography. Like if a book takes place in a real city, you can look up places in that city, and sometimes they look different than you were imagining. It can just give you a sense like you're actually there, even though you're not actually there. And you can at least know by name or certain landmarks or streets or areas within cities. So it's definitely interesting. You can learn more that way. 6. It improves your vocabulary and gives you a better understanding of language. You can learn words that you didn't know what they meant before. Like you might have to look them up in the dictionary or online. This is especially the case with older books. They often use kind of elevated language where it's like, ooh, what does that word mean? It sounds very sophisticated or smart. And sometimes you can see uses of words where the meaning of the word has changed. Sometimes you're not exactly sure what it meant then, but you try to figure it out, even if it's something kind of similar but a little bit different. And you often get an improved general understanding of language and just how people can use kind of how plays on words or plays on sentences or different associations or things like that can be used, and how they can make you feel or make you think a certain way. And you can in your own life find new words to use and have a better sense of how to use language to convey a point or make people feel certain things. 7. It is a way to meet imaginary people. It's interesting and fun to meet new people, and fiction is a way that you can, in a sense, meet new people. Now, these are imaginary people, or sometimes they can be animals, talking animals, or that, or some other mythological creature that doesn't even exist. But you can be exposed to all different personality types and types of people through fiction that you might not necessarily get exposure to in real life, or even through the internet. I mean, if you're talking about people who lived hundreds of years ago. Another interesting thing is that probably all the characters in a novel or fiction book are based on a real person or on multiple real people, a composite of real people. So, and maybe it's a little bit exaggerated or changed around, but there's usually at least one or two or maybe more people that character is based on. So in a sense, you kind of get to meet a person or multiple people, maybe from the past, through that character, because that character was based on that person or those people. So in a sense, you kind of get to meet people from the past in a very indirect way. 8. It is a good form of entertainment. Here's the thing. I love watching movies and TV shows, but I feel like reading is a form of entertainment that's the healthiest for you. Now, I think there can be benefits to watching movies and TV shows, but I do think research shows that reading is a better form of entertainment just for your overall health than watching things are, or at least watching things can be good, but more in moderation, while you can read a lot or listen to books a lot. I mean, as long as you're not straining your eyes, and it's going to be really good for your overall health, physical health, mental health. So reading is a really good form of entertainment, maybe even overall the healthiest form of entertainment. entertainment. Now, doesn't mean I don't like other forms of entertainment, but with reading, you're kind of more actively collaborating in the process of art. With a movie or TV show, it's kind of just there for you, and you can watch it, and you can enjoy it and take it in, but with a book, you're kind of creating the world in your mind. You imagine what the characters look like, and what the whole scene looks like, and the lighting, and just the general vibes, and so you're creating the scene and the characters in your head. You're part of the process. It's not just done for you. So it's not as passive as almost any other form of entertainment, where it's just basically there for you. Like, you're part of the collaborative process. And this is true of listening to audiobooks. When it comes to fiction, I actually prefer to listen to audiobooks, so I can just imagine the whole scene as it's playing out in the story in my mind. Sometimes I would lay on the couch with like a blanket over my head and close my eyes so I could like really imagine the scene. So reading, or especially listening to audiobooks, can be a way to relax and recharge, but there's a certain level of activeness involved in it, and not as much passiveness as most other forms of entertainment and art. 9, it gives you something to think about. If you're like me and you deal with anxiety and just like your mind, you feel like you always have to be thinking about things, reading fiction can help because you get wrapped up in a story. So instead of thinking about things that are making you anxious, or just feeling like you have to think about something in general and then you think about something that makes you anxious, when you're engrossed in a story, you'll think about that instead of getting anxious. I find this is especially true with cozy mysteries, or mysteries more of the cozy variety. I guess in some ways you could say, well, there's a certain dark element to those, since usually someone is no longer with us, or at least something happened, and that's what the mystery's about. But instead of thinking about things that make you anxious, you'll be wondering you'll be wondering who done it in the mystery and how it will all come together. And with other stories too, you can be thinking about the themes or the characters. 10, it can lead you to deeper truths. A simple story often has deep truth in it. You can learn courage and resilience from characters. And sometimes the characters don't even need to be humans. You can learn bravery from rabbits and see them face all the challenges, difficulties, dangers, and hardships, and overcome it all in the end, and make a better world. Not all fiction you read has to be like that. Maybe something like Cozy Mysteries has that less so than some others. It's just more kind of a story you can get wrapped up in, but even then there might be elements of something deeper. So sometimes it's fun to sometimes light escapist reading can be fun and certainly has its place, but it can also be interesting to read books that challenge you on a deeper, more fundamental and foundational level. And of course, not all fiction you read has to be like that, but it's nice to have some fiction that is like that. Well, those are my 10 points. I hope something I've said has been helpful to you. What's your favorite novel, fiction book, or fiction book series? Leave it below in the comments. Until next time, don't be the main character in an annoying or selfish way, but don't be afraid to take charge of your life and be the main character in a healthy way.